Praise the Lord. According to 1 Year Bible Reading Plan Day 47, we have Deuteronomy chapter 1 to 3. Deuteronomy chapter 1. In this book are the words that Moses spoke to the people of Israel when they were in the wilderness east of the Jordan River. They were in the Jordan Valley near Suf, between the town of Paran on one side and towns of Tophel, Laban, Hezroth, Dizahab on the other. It takes 11 days to travel from Mount Sinai to Kadesh Barnea by way of the hill country of Edom. On the first day of the 11th month of the 40th year, after they had left Egypt, Moses told the people everything that the Lord had commanded him to tell them. This was after the Lord had defeated King Sihon of the Amorites, who ruled in the town of Heshbon, and King Og of Bashan, who ruled in the towns of Ashtaroth and Edrei. It was while the people were east of the Jordan in the territory of Moab that Moses began to explain God's laws and teachings. He said, "When we were at Mount Sinai, the Lord our God said to us, 'You have stayed long enough at this mountain. Break camp and move on. Go to the hill country of the Amorites and to all the surrounding regions, to the Jordan Valley, to the hill country and the lowlands, to the southern region and to the Mediterranean coast. Go to the land of Canaan and on beyond the Lebanon mountains as far as the great Euphrates River. All of this is the land which I, the Lord, promised to give to your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and to their descendants. Go and occupy it." Moses said to the people, "While we were still at Mount Sinai, I told you, the responsibility for leading you is too much for me. I can't do it alone. The Lord your God has made you as numerous as the stars in the sky. May the Lord, the God of your ancestors, make you increase 1,000 times more and make you prosperous as he promised. But how can I alone bear the heavy responsibility for settling your disputes? Choose some wise, understanding, and experienced men from each tribe, and I will put them in charge of you." And you agreed that it was a good thing to do. So I took the wise and experienced leaders you chose from your tribes, and I placed them in charge of you. Some were responsible for 1,000 people, some for 100, some for 50, and some for 10. I also appointed other officials throughout the tribes. All that time I instructed them. Listen to the disputes that come up among your people. Judge every dispute fairly, whether it concerns only your own people or involves foreigners who live among you. Show no partiality in your decisions. Judge everyone on the same basis, no matter who they are. Do not be afraid of anyone, for the decisions you make come from God. If any case is too difficult for you, bring it to me, and I will decide it. At the same time, I gave you instructions for everything else you were to do. We did what the Lord our God commanded us. We left Mount Sinai and went through that vast and fearful desert on the way to the hill country to the Amorites. When we reached Kadesh Barnea, I told you, "You have now come to the hill country of the Amorites, which the Lord our God, the God of our ancestors, is giving us. Look, there it is. Go and occupy it as he commanded. Do not hesitate or be afraid." But you came to me and said, "Let's send men ahead of us to spy out the land, so that they can tell us the best route to take and what kind of cities they are." That seemed like a good thing to do, so I selected 12 men, one from each tribe. They went into the hill country as far as Eshcol Valley and explored it. They brought us back some fruit they found there and reported that the land which the Lord our God was giving us was very fertile. But you rebelled against the command of the Lord your God, and you would not enter the land. You grumbled to one another. "The Lord hates us. He brought us out of Egypt just to hand us over to these Amorites so that they kill us. Why should we go there? We are afraid. The men we sent tell us that the people there are stronger and taller than we are, and that they live in cities with walls that reach the sky. They saw giants there. But I told you, don't be afraid of those people. The Lord your God will lead you and will fight for you, just as you saw him do in Egypt and in the desert. You saw how he brought you safely all the way to this place, just as a father would carry his son. But in spite of what I said, you still would not trust the Lord, even though he always went ahead of you to find a place for you to camp, to show you the way. He went in front of you in a pillar of fire by night and in a pillar of cloud by day. The Lord heard your complaints and became angry. And so he solemnly declared, not one of you from this evil generation will enter the fertile land that I promised to give your ancestors. Only Caleb, son of Jephunneh, will enter it. He has remained faithful to me, and I will give him and his descendants the land that he has explored. Because of you, the Lord became angry with me and said, not even you, Moses, will enter the land. But strengthen the determination of your helper, Joshua son of Nun. He will lead Israel to occupy the land. Then the Lord said to all of us, your children who are still too young to know right from wrong will enter the land. The children you said would be seized by your enemies. I will give the land to them, and they will occupy it. But as for you people, turn around and go back into the desert on the road to the Gulf of Aqaba. You replied, Moses, we have sinned against the Lord, but now we will attack, just as the Lord our God had commanded us. Then each one of you got ready to fight, thinking it would be easy to invade the hill country. But the Lord said to me, warn them not to attack, for I will not be with them, and their enemies will defeat them. I told you what the Lord had said, but you paid no attention. You rebelled against him, and in your pride you marched into the hill country. Then the Amorites who lived in those hills came out against you like a swarm of bees. They chased you as far as Hormah and defeated you there in the hill country of Edom. So you cried out to the Lord for help, but he would not listen to you or pay any attention to you. So then, after we had stayed at Kadesh for a long time, Deuteronomy chapter 2. We finally turned and went into the desert on the road to the Gulf of Aqaba, as the Lord had commanded, and we spent a long time wandering about in the hill country of Edom. Then the Lord told me that we had spent enough time wandering about in those hills and that we should go north. He told me to give you the following instructions. You are about to go through the hill country of Edom, the territory of your distant relatives, the descendants of Esau. They will be afraid of you, but you must not start a war with them, because I am not going to give you so much as a square foot of their land. I have given Edom to Esau's descendants. You may buy food and water from them. Remember how the Lord your God has blessed you in everything that you have done. He has taken care of you as you wander through this vast desert. He has been with you these 40 years, and you have had everything you need. So we moved on and left the road that goes from the towns of Elath and Ezion-Geber to the Dead Sea, and we turned northeast toward Moab. The Lord said to me, don't trouble the people of Moab, the descendants of Lot, or start a war against them. I have given them the city of Ur, and I am not going to give you any of their land. A mighty race of giants called Emim used to live in Ar. They were as tall as the Anakim, another race of giants. Like the Anakim, they were also known as Rephaim, but the Moabites called them Emim. The Horites used to live in Edom. But the descendants of Esau chased them out, destroyed their nation, and settled there themselves, just as the Israelites later chased their enemies out of the land that the Lord gave them. Then we crossed the Zered River as the Lord told us to do. This was 38 years after we had left Kadesh Barnea. All the fighting men of that generation had died, as the Lord had said they would. The Lord kept on opposing them until he had destroyed them all. After they had all died, the Lord said to us, "Today you are to pass through the territory of Moab by way of Ar. You will then be near the land of the Ammonites, the descendants of Lot. Don't trouble them or start a war against them, because I am not going to give to you any of the land that I have given them. This territory is also known as the land of the Rephaim, the name of the people who used to live there. The Ammonites called them Zamzuim. They were as tall as the Anakim. There were many of them, and they were a mighty face. But the Lord destroyed them so that the Ammonites took over their land and settled there. The Lord had done the same thing for the Edomites, the descendants of Esau, who live in the hill country of Edom. He destroyed the Horites so that the Edomites took over their land and settled there where they still live. The land along the Mediterranean coast had been settled by people from the island of Crete. They had destroyed the Avim, the original inhabitants, and had taken over all their land as far south as the city of Gaza. After we had passed through Moab, the Lord told us, "Now start out and cross the Arnon River. I am placing in your power Sihon, the Amorite king of Heshbon, along with his land. Attack him and begin occupying his land. From today on, I will make people everywhere afraid of you. Everyone will tremble with fear at the mention of your name." Then I sent messengers from the desert of Kedemoth to the king Sihon of Heshbon with the following offer of peace. "Let us pass through your country. We will go straight through and not leave the road. We will pay for the food we eat and the water we drink. All we want to do is to pass through your country until we cross the Jordan River into the land that the Lord our God is giving us. The descendants of Esau who live in Edom and the Moabites who live in Ar allowed us to pass through their territory. But King Sihon would not let us pass through his country. The Lord your God had made him stubborn and rebellious, so that we could defeat him and take his territory, which we still occupy. Then the Lord said to me, 'Look, I have made King Sihon and his land helpless before you. Take his land and occupy it.' Sihon came out with all his men to fight us near the town of Jahaz. But the Lord our God put him in our power, and we killed him, his sons and all his men. At the time we captured and destroyed every town and put everyone to death, men, women, and children. We left no survivors. We took the livestock and plundered the towns. The Lord our God let us capture all the towns of Aroer on the edge of the Arnon Valley, and the city in the middle of that valley, all the way to Gilead. No town had walls too strong for us, but we did not go near the territory of the Amorites, or the banks of the Jabbok River, or to the towns of the hill country, or to any other place where the Lord our God had commanded us not to go." Deuteronomy chapter 3. Next, we moved north toward the region of Bashan, and King Og came out with all his men to fight near the town of Erdai. But the Lord said to me, "Don't be afraid of him. I am going to give him, his men, and all his territory to you. Do the same thing to him that you did to Sihon, the Amorite king who ruled in Heshbon." So the Lord also placed King Og and his people in our power, and we slaughtered them all. At the same time, we captured all his towns. There was not one that we did not take. In all, we captured 60 towns, the whole region of Argob, where King Og of Bashan ruled. All these towns were fortified with high walls, gates, and bars to lock the gates. And there were also many villages without walls. We destroyed all the towns and put to death all the men, women, and children, just as we did in the towns that belonged to King Sihon of Heshbon. We took the livestock and plundered the towns. At that time, we took those two Amorite kings the land east of the Jordan River, and from the Arnon River to Mount Hermon. Mount Hermon is called Syrian by the Sidonians and Senir by the Amorites. We took all the territory of King Og of Bashan, the cities on the plateau, the regions of Gilead and of the Bashan, as far east as the towns of Selekah and Edrei. King Og was the last of the Rephidim. His coffin, made of stone, was 6 feet wide and almost 14 feet long. According to standard measurements, it can still be seen in the Amorite city of Rabbah. When we took possession of the land, I assigned to the tribes of Reuben and Gad the territory north of the town of Aroer, near the Arnon River, and part of the hill country of Gilead, along with its towns. To half the tribe of Manasseh, I assigned the rest of Gilead, and also all the Bashan, where Og had ruled, that is, the entire Argob region. Bashan was known as the land of the Rephaim. Jair, from the tribe of Manasseh, took the entire region of Argob, that is, Bashan, as far as the border of Gesur and Makkah. He named the villages after himself, and they are still known as the villages of Jair. I assigned Gilead to the clan of Mashir, of tribe of Manasseh. And to the tribes of Reuben and Gad, I assigned the territory from Gilead to the Arnon River. The middle of the river was their southern boundary, and their northern boundary was the Jabbok River, part of which formed the Ammonite border. On the west, their territory extended to the Jordan River, from Lake Galilee in the north down the Dead Sea in the south and to the foot of Mount Pisgah on the east. At the same time, I gave them the following instructions. The Lord our God has given you this land east of the Jordan to occupy. Now arm your fighting men and send them across the Jordan ahead of the other tribes of Israel to help them occupy their land. Only your wives, children, and livestock. I know you have a lot of livestock, will remain behind in the towns that I have assigned to you. Help the other Israelites until they occupy the land that the Lord is giving them west of the Jordan, until the Lord lets them live there in peace, as he has already done here for you. After that, you may return to this land that I have assigned to you. Then I instructed Joshua. You have seen all that the Lord your God did to those two kings, Sihon and Og, and he will do the same thing to everyone else whose land you invade. Don't be afraid of them, for the Lord your God will fight for you. At that time I earnestly prayed, Sovereign Lord, I know that you have shown me only the beginning of the great and wonderful things you're going to do. There is no God in heaven or on earth who can do the mighty things that you have done. Let me cross the Jordan River, Lord, and see the fertile land on the other side, the beautiful hill country and the Lebanon mountains. But because of you people, the Lord was angry with me and would not listen to me. Instead, he said, That's enough. Don't mention this again. Go to the peak of Mount Pisgah and look to the north and to the south, to the east and to the west. Look carefully at what you see, because you will never go across the Jordan. Give Joshua his instructions. Strengthen his determination, because he will lead the people across to occupy the land that you see. So we remained in the valley opposite the town of Beth Peor. May the Lord bless us abundantly. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.